A few weeks ago, I posted a video tech demo using RPG Maker on the first PlayStation. Now, this RPG Maker is an older one, not quite as capable as modern RPG Makers. You cannot create your own custom scripts like you can in newer ones. Rather, you are restricted to the options that this RPG Maker provides out of the box. The same goes with the graphics. You basically have to use what's provided to you. You can use a few custom graphics, but mostly it's what's out of the box. Now, in this tech demo, I had a monkey character, and this monkey character says, "All things considered, being turned into a monkey ain't bad. I even get to have a cute little bow tied to my tail." Now, it should be worth noting that this monkey is not the same monkey as the monkeys I've used before. It occurs to me that I've actually used the monkey sprite in RPG Maker multiple times. I had a monkey in my 10-year anniversary Let's Play creation series, where I showed how to make a game with RPG Maker. And I also had a monkey character in my old Collectathon game, Jester's Hunt. And the reason why is it's just a really cute monkey sprite. RPG Maker 1, as far as I'm aware, is the only RPG Maker that even provides a monkey sprite. So, after creating this tech demo and looking at that dialogue, I started thinking, what if I went all in? What if I made a game not only starring a monkey, but a character who has been transformed into a monkey? And so I started to do some brainstorming, and I came up with this character here, Cassandra. She is a woman who got turned into a monkey. Although, not a brown monkey, she's a white monkey. A very pretty color for her. And actually, she also doesn't have that cute little bow. She is without a bow. I have modded the monkey sprite to be without a bow, because she is opposed to her monkey transformation. She is not okay with it. The last thing she's going to do is decorate her tail, because as far as she's concerned, she's not even supposed to have a tail. And so the idea with this character is that we get to witness her journey as she comes to terms with being transformed into a monkey. With that in mind, I wound up thinking, okay, she's the main character, but what if she wasn't necessarily the main player? What if the player was someone else? Someone who was with her for the journey, witnessing her transformation, and following her as she comes to terms with her new body. And so I came up with this character right here, although I say character loosely. This is a shadow that has been brought to life by an evil wizard. More importantly, this is the player, the ultimate silent protagonist. The shadow was brought to life with one sole purpose: to be a puppet. A fact that Cassandra quickly discovers. So she basically steals you, the player, away from that evil wizard so that the wizard cannot use you for evil. And you being a puppet, obedient to commands, is something that I'm really going to be playing up during this adventure. This adventure, which it just occurred to me I haven't provided you all a title of it. Currently the game is called Cassandra and the Shadow. With that said, this game is very early in development. Like I said, I only came up with the idea for it a few weeks ago. And this is very much a side project because I'm still working on Let's Plays. I'm also streaming Mario RPG Remake at Twitch, which, by the way, might wind up being the very last game I stream. Either that or Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I haven't decided yet. Point is, I don't really get the opportunity to work on this very often, and I also have a pretty terrible track record when it comes to actually making games. I've had plenty of ideas that just didn't go anywhere. But I figured I would share this one at the very least, because I've definitely got some ideas for this one. I have an ending in mind. I have a few key events during the journey in mind. I also know how I want Cassandra to grow as a character, not only coming to terms as a monkey, but also her skills in battle, which I won't be covering in this video. That'll be coming later, assuming that I make more developmental videos like this one. With that said, because this is so early in development, I thought it would be fun to show off some of the early in development stuff that I have put in. Starting with the first town that you visit after Cassandra gets turned into a monkey. And when I say this game is early in development, I mean it's really early in development. Like, we have a pretty bare-bones world map right now. I haven't really added any scenery outside of the markers for the first few locations. I don't even have any music for it because, well, that depends on what music I'm going to be using in other places, which I also haven't decided on yet. In fact, as we enter the first town, which is currently just called New Town, I don't have a name for it yet either. I don't have any music for the new town either. Now, for context, as we enter this new town, we have this current team up of Cassandra and the Shadow. As I said, Cassandra has already been turned into a monkey. At the start of the adventure, Cassandra and her husband, Sir Ryan, challenge this evil wizard to a fight. The evil wizard is named Nominus. During the fight, Cassandra was knocked out and awakens to find that Sir Ryan is killed and Nominus has disappeared. The only ones left besides her and the corpse of Sir Ryan is the Shadow. And as I said, she winds up fleeing with the Shadow so that Nominus cannot use the Shadow. And as I said, you are the Shadow. And so we arrive at the first town, New Town. It would be funny if I actually called it New Town, but I need to come up with a name for it eventually. Maybe I can use that name for a town later on. Maybe. Don't know. Also, as we enter New Town, it should be mentioned that the town is not really built. I mean, we have this entrance, which is very much a placeholder. There's a well up there, and there are absolutely no buildings. Wait a moment. I should probably take the lead. I don't want you inciting a panic. Hey, look over there. Is that a monkey? What is that thing? Do not be alarmed. It is I, Lady Cassandra. I've been transformed by Nominus. What? Go fetch Elder Tim. I'm not terribly good at coming up with names, so for the Elder, I decided to call him Tim. Oh boy. There's a lot going on in these scenes, by the way. They're very animated. And there's also plenty of story to tell, so these scenes are going to be taking up a lot of memory, which on modern RPG makers is not a concern at all. But in RPG Maker 1, you save your game creations to the PlayStation 1's memory cards, and each memory card can only hold 15 blocks of data. This game, just the scripting, with the opening, the first dungeon, and the beginning of this town is already taking up 3 blocks of memory. So, this game is probably going to take multiple memory cards. Lady Cassandra, it appears that you have suffered a terrible fate. And Sir Ryan, it seems you have also undergone a transformation. I can't imagine which of yours is worse. Oh, how I wish this could be Sir Ryan. But it pains me to say that he has suffered a worse fate. Sir Ryan has been slain. What? No, we are doomed. But then, who is this? This is a shadow brought to life by Nominus. Sir Ryan and we fought this shadow and Nominus. When it seemed like we had the upper hand, Nominus cast a spell on me, an excruciatingly painful one. I blacked out. For how long, I'm not sure. When I awoke, Sir Ryan was slain, and I was now this. Strangely, Nominus was gone, and he had left behind his shadow. Not wanting to let Nominus return and claim it, I took it with me. And you brought it here? What if it attacks us? There is no need to worry. I have commanded it to only attack in self-defense. You commanded it? How did you manage that? As far as I can tell, the shadow is mindless. A reminder that the shadow is the player. It will blindly follow any command given to it. Harumph! I'll believe it when I see it. All right, Shadow. I command you to jump into the well. And at this point we have gained control. And, well, we're supposed to follow orders, so I guess we're gonna jump into the well. By the way, Lady Cassandra is clearly staying behind. This is noteworthy because when we entered town, Cassandra and the Shadow were in the same party, and yet now I find myself as the Shadow, able to leave Cassandra behind. At some point during this cutscene, there was a little swapperoo. Cassandra, the party member, was swapped out for Cassandra, an NPC. It was a seamless transition, and honestly, I can't even remember where the transition takes place, so it is a very seamless way to drop Cassandra out of your team, because BT dubs, she's out of your team. To drop her from your team without it being obvious. Anyway, let's go ahead and follow the orders. I guess it is pretty obedient. Confound it, we don't know what that thing's made of. Help it out before it contaminates our water. Sure. Yuck. This thing is squishy. And dry? Come here, Shadow. And once again, we have control. I definitely wanted to give the impression that you, the player, do have to follow commands, and it wouldn't be it would not be as interesting if it was just all played out in a cutscene. Well then, now that we've established that, do you have any idea what happened to Nominus? I'm sorry, no. As I said, when I awoke, the only ones left were myself, the Shadow, and... I understand. I will admit, this whole situation is unusual. You two. Go to the fortress. Report back what you find. But be careful. Nominus could still be around. Yes, Elder. Okay, a little bit of trickery going on right there. So, one of RPG Maker 1's limitations is, under normal circumstances, you cannot tell multiple characters to move during a cutscene at the same time. They can only move one at a time. The exception is if there is an event with a duplicate. For example, the twins. One twin was right here, and the twin's duplicate was right here. Duplicate events basically share the same script as the original. So, for example, if the original is told to move to the right one space, the duplicate would also move to the right one space. If the original is told to move to a specific point on the map, the duplicate also moves to a specific point in the map. And this option allows the characters to move in different directions at the same time, albeit converging at the same point on the map. Just off screen, both of the twins are standing on top of each other right now. That said, during most of the cutscene, the twins were actually moving independently of each other. This is because, for most of the cutscene, they were separate characters, up until the point where they were standing here and here, at which point I swapped them out for their twin versions, and then I told their twins to walk away. RPG Maker 1 definitely has its limitations, but that just means you gotta be creative to get around them. Anyway, will they be alright? Your concern is noted, but they should be fine. They're lumberjacks. They deal with monsters in the forest all the time. Now, while we wait for their return, you need a place to rest. Ooh, can we keep her at our home? Can we? Shh, she is not a pet. I'd imagine the very idea would be very degrading to someone who was unwillingly turned into an animal. Please forgive the boy. Perhaps it would be best if you came to my home. Thank you, Elder. I would appreciate that. Follow me, Shadow. And welcome to the Elder's home. Like I said, early in development, I have not actually placed any buildings yet. I have a patch of sand here as a reminder of where the Elder is standing during this scene, so I know where the building is going to be placed. Oh, I should probably mention that in RPG Maker 1, map creation and eventing are done in two completely separate menus. So if you want to build a map around an event, you have to remember where it is that you place the event, which is why I placed a bit of sand here as a marker for myself. Likewise, the door is a scripted object and not actually part of the map. If it's not too much to ask, can you please have your shadow wait outside? It makes me nervous. I can understand that. Admittedly, I feel the same with it being bigger than me. Wait right here, Shadow. Ack! Once again, there was a little bit of trickery there to sneak Cassandra out of the party, swapping her with an event that happened to look like her. Stay away, kid. You don't know where that thing's been. You may come in now. Honestly, it'll be less creepy than you standing outside my door. And that's the end of that scene. This is the inside of the mayor's house right now. Appropriately, doesn't exist, aside from this single tile. I have not actually started developing the inside of the mayor's house yet. And because I'm sure some of you are wondering what this town looks like, especially before the cutscene triggers, I'm doing a little bit of developer shenanigans and show you. So basically, all the characters that appear in the scene are in position to appear when needed, with the exception of this guy's girlfriend, who doesn't spawn until she's supposed to spawn, because I don't want her being on screen whenever they pass the spot where she spawns. Also, not only is the Elder here waiting to be summoned, but there's also the Elder here waiting for you to arrive at his house. Which, by the way, I should mention that when he invited the Shadow inside, I also had control there. I will say I'm probably going to edit the dialogue of this scene a bit, because Cassandra, I think I made her a little too... And I was hoping I could think of the word before I finish that sentence. Composed? She was too composed, given the trauma that she just suffered. I think I'm going to rewrite it so she's a little bit more nervous. Which I guess means that, hey, y'all got to see the first draft of the scene before I reworked it. I am also uncertain whether there's going to be the dog inside the Elder's house. I have an idea of how I want to use the dog, which I won't say why, because I might use the dog after all, but I might not. And, yeah, aside from the things relevant to this cutscene and the placeholder entrance here, this town is... This is not a town. This is not a town. It's called Newtown, but it's not a town yet. I'll get around to that eventually. And now, working backwards, I'm going to show you the first dungeon of the game. I just started up my file again, going through the opening cutscene, which I'm not going to show off yet. The opening cutscene is basically 99% finished. I just have to maybe alter one or two lines of dialogue and work on the timing of certain things, but otherwise it is basically finished. But again, I'll show that off some other time. For now, we're going to go into the first dungeon of the game before we reach the first town, Windy Woods, which I think is actually going to be renamed to Windy Forest. Chapter 1, A Tale of Loss. I'm definitely figuring on this game taking place in chapters. I'm not yet certain whether I'm going to have this be Chapter 1 or a prologue. And, by the way, the Windy Woods, a lot more finished than the town, that much I'll say. I mean, heck, I even chose a song for this place. Kind of a somber song considering what just happened to Cassandra and her now-deceased husband. The Windy Woods. Already I don't like how the wind feels on my fur. But I need to return to a town on the other side of the woods. There are also monsters here. Easy monsters when I was human. I don't know what being turned into this will do to my combat skills, so lead the way and help me defend myself. Yeah, definitely a lot more finished. The scenery is basically all here. And we also have random encounters. The random encounters aren't finished. They basically only have 1 HP. It is also worth mentioning that you, the player, are the shadow. You are not Cassandra. Cassandra is going to be an AI-controlled character for the entire duration of the game. Which, by the way, has definitely made things very tricky to figure out when it comes to what skills to give her. Because the AI of RPG Maker really likes to spam magic and status afflictions. Even if the status affliction only has like a 30% chance of connecting, the AI will try to spam it. And so, giving Cassandra one of those spells means that she would spend a lot of turns not being able to do anything because she's trying to use this instant death spell that rarely actually works. So, I'm not giving Cassandra an instant death spell. I'm choosing some spells that will be cheap and at the very least has a medium chance of connecting. For now, this is in fact the Windy Woods, aka the Windy Forest, and therefore it is windy. This is basically an introduction to a mechanic that will be more important in just a little bit. Meanwhile, you can do a little bit of exploration. There's going to be a treasure chest here. Haven't quite figured out what items to make yet, nor do I know what sort of equipment to create aside from a sword and a dagger. But eventually there will be a treasure chest there. I'm thinking about possibly making accessories in place of armor. The idea being, Cassandra's been turned into a monkey. People don't normally make armor for monkeys. It's worth noting, by the way, that RPG Maker 1 does not allow you to have characters and objects travel diagonally. Now, one thing of importance, During the opening cinematic, it is made clear that Cassandra is a magic user. She is a sorceress. Now, right now, she doesn't have any magic. I have not come up with what sort of spells she's going to have in the opening, but it doesn't matter right now. But I did, at the very least, want to ensure that the player did go through combat to discover Cassandra's potential abilities. I mean, you can't actually control Cassandra, but it's important for her to show that Cassandra is using a regular attack rather than the magic spells that she had during the opening. Now, this is a scripted encounter. You cannot run from scripted encounters. I also have not yet assigned a song to this encounter, but it's basically going to use the same song as the random encounters. But I wanted to make sure that if the player reached this point without having gone through combat, the player is forced to go through combat. And the way I'm keeping track of that is by having an invisible scripted object right here where I'm standing trigger an encounter if you reach the spot without any money. If you have money, that means you must have gone through an encounter. But now that we know for certain that we have had an encounter properly, Cassandra takes a moment to step behind, once again using some trickery, having a scripted character take the place of Cassandra, with Cassandra leaving the team momentarily. During this moment, we are being blocked by an invisible wall. I know it doesn't look invisible, but I made it visible while I'm working on the game, so I know where it is. We have to go see why Cassandra stopped. I can't seem to cast any of my spells. I'm not gonna lie, that scares me a little. I feel helpless. I haven't felt helpless since I was a little girl. What has Nominus done to me? And there's the rub. Though a skilled sorceress, before her transformation, being transformed into a monkey has led her to being unable to cast any magic. She's got no MP, and eventually, once I create all her spells will be listed here, but of course she has no way to cast them without any MP. Another pile of grass right here. I'm gonna call it windweed. It's basically a hay bale that is recolored green. I didn't want it to just be hay. Meanwhile, kind of a hidden path right here. There will be some sort of useful item hidden over here. It's also worth pointing out how the boundary of the forest is not filled in with grass. I considered filling it in with grass, but I decided to have it be empty space between the trees instead. It makes the forest seem darker than if I filled it all with greenery. And given the situation with the story, a darker forest, along with the somber music, seemed very appropriate. I should also mention that I have the encounter rate set to the lowest possible number, so getting kind of unlucky with the encounters there. I could have scripted encounters everywhere, encounters wandering around on the map, but that does take up a lot of extra memory, and there aren't very many monster graphics available for use outside of battle, which would limit my ability to choose monsters to be battling. I also want to point out that to make the outskirts of the forest interesting, I had these little patches where there is a clearing so it's not just endless black void trees. And then we come to this scene right here. There's a pond just ahead. We can drink from it to heal if we need to. Very important considering we're going straight into a dungeon at the start of the game and don't have access to an inn. And also a limited supply of items. I'm probably going to give the player a few items to start with. I mean, considering Cassandra and Sir Ryan were off on an adventure, they probably had some items on hand when they fought Nominus. I will probably have some sort of sound effect right here to indicate that Cassandra just drank from the pond. Meanwhile, invisible walls because we don't need the player wandering away from Cassandra. There are also no random encounters on this map ever. Now, right here is a scene that I posted a screenshot of on Discord, so some of y'all will probably recognize this scene, where Cassandra is looking in the water. And one thing I had to make sure to do is modify the monkey sprite so that the tail is facing the same direction in the reflection. It was a worthwhile change. I mean, after all, I already took the effort to remove the bow from her tail. I'll admit, a small part of me was hoping the water would uncurse me. But the animal in the reflection remains. Can you see it? When I lift my hand, so does it. When I speak, it mouths my words. It is a surreal sensation. Any other day, I might look at this monkey and think, "Oh, how cute." But the way my body feels, the way the monkey matches my movements, and the way the wind blows through its fur and mine. There's no disconnect. I can feel it. I am not just watching some animal. I am that animal. Naked and alone. Why? So, you probably spotted another invisible wall appear and crawl under Cassandra. I needed Cassandra to switch to a mid-step pose in order to splash away the reflection in the water, but there is no way to manually switch to a mid-step pose. Now, my invisible walls are actually character sprites, so what I did is spawned an invisible wall, had it step up so that it would be in a mid-step pose, change it to Cassandra, and there we go. Now we have Cassandra in a mid-step pose. It's a little distracting right now. It'll look a lot better when you can't actually see the invisible wall. I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron right now. But yeah, we can in fact heal with the pond. And no, I am not going to make a constant reflection that follows the player around if they walk past the water, because that is literally impossible. You cannot have a scripted character follow the player's movements. We'll just assume that the reflection is perpetually splashed away. Anyway, no more invisible wall. Therefore, we're allowed to proceed onward. And this right here is the first save point in the game. Although in RPG Maker 1, you can also save anywhere on the world map. Wait, the monsters are swarming here. So Ryan and I, we struggled through here until we learned the forest's secret. The wind blows freely through the paths of least resistance. Destroy the collections of the wind weeds and let the wind guide our way. So, we basically have the first puzzle of the game. We have to smack the wind weeds so the wind will blow through, as she said, the path of least resistance. Now you might be wondering, what is causing resistance in the other paths? Monsters. Lots and lots of monsters. And these are scripted encounters, so you can't run away from them. You have to fight them. Of course, I am in debug mode right now, so I can just exit the battle. Coming up with the puzzle for this area was kinda tricky. Years ago, I was working on a game called Slayer's Reign, also for RPG Maker 1, and in that game, the first dungeon was also a forest. For the gimmick of that forest, I made some log sprites that you had to push out of your way in order to be able to progress forward. And in a couple of instances, you had to push the logs in the correct order, otherwise, for example, you might block your path to a hidden item. I could have just did a log puzzle again here, but I wanted to do something different, just in case I ever decide to revive that old project. And coming up with a new gimmick was... It definitely took some thought. I was basically looking through all the different objects that RPG Maker 1 provides, eventually coming across the hay bales, which have a built-in recolor for grass, or they could be snow piles as well, you know, if you wanted, along with the grass tile that is already available as just scattered grass. And it's like, okay, I got something here. How could I use this? And eventually I came up with the idea of wind guiding you through an open maze. Now, it wasn't my first idea for the wind effect. It took a little bit of refining to figure out exactly how I wanted this mechanic to work. And unfortunately, it's been a couple of weeks since I built this maze, and I forget what my initial idea was, which is part of the reason why I wanted to work on a devlog here, to kind of document this game as I am working on it. Because I think it would be neat to document games in development. I see indie developers doing that a lot. You don't see that much from AAA companies like Nintendo and Ubisoft. It would be really nice if we could actually see those games in development. I mean, you used to be able to see that. Like, there's a whole bunch of beta screenshots of Super Mario RPG, the original one, and Super Mario 64, and it's interesting to see how different those games were early on. So I kind of wanted to recreate that feeling, to show games in progress and see how far they came along. And in fact, something that I did when I was building this fortress is I actually marked what paths these windweeds would be taking. It would be a dirt path, so like there would be a dirt path right here so that I would know to script windweeds to go in this direction. And in this case, it's actually a circle. There would be a treasure chest right here, eventually looping around. The correct path is this way. Then from here, let's see here. This path is wrong, and in fact, if I hold the debug button to skip through the encounters, it's pretty much a dead end. Don't go that way. Up is the wrong way. Although, once again, holding the debug button, passing through the encounters, the exit happens to be right up here, if you wanted to fight your way up there. But instead, gotta go this way. It's also worth mentioning that this map does not have any random encounters. I considered random encounters, but considering the intent is to make the encounters the wrong paths, I thought it would be a little bit too confusing if just randomly you would have encounters while taking the correct path. Meanwhile, we have a couple more piles of windweeds. This one taking an interesting detour. I'm hoping that the way this spins around gets your attention, because if you follow it, it takes a hidden path. There's a hidden path right here, taking you to what is going to be another treasure chest. And this pile of windweeds has served its purpose. Yep. Anywhere else you cannot walk through. It is specifically right here. And if you happen to know this path is here, you don't need to follow the windweeds. You can just go straight in. The way this works is this line right here is covered with an invisible scripted object, an actual invisible scripted object. I believe it is object number 39, color 3. Color 1 is a white tile, color 2 is a black tile, color 4 is a yellow tile, and color 3 is an invisible tile. All 4 colors are walkable, at least by the player. Wandering characters cannot step onto these tiles. If you tell a scripted character to go over it, it will, but not aimlessly wandering characters. Anyway, to the left is the correct path. To the right is just a loop. Once again, I'm holding down the debug button in order to walk over everything. And we eventually come to the end of this segment. We're almost out of the forest. There's a town just beyond its exit. People are about to see me like this. The thought is making me sick to my stomach. A part of me wants to avoid the town completely, but I have a duty to inform them about the battle against Nominus. Sigh. Okay, let's go. I'm going to have a similar scene to that one later on in the game, not too much further in fact. I'm going to have to make sure to try to make the scenes too much not alike. Anyway, in this segment, we have random encounters having returned. We also have more of these windweeds, no longer serving a functional purpose. They just blow around whenever you hit them. And the exit to the forest is right here. Now, just to show you a little bit of behind-the-scenes action, this section right here is actually right next to the entrance of the forest from earlier. They're both on the same map. I mean, technically, this section over here is implied to be further to the north, but no, it's actually the same map. And in fact, here's where one treasure chest is going to be, and if you look over here with these little clearings, you can actually see those very same clearings from the end of the forest. Although, it's not really obvious unless you happen to know that's the case. Also, something I forgot to point out, at the entrance of this forest, we had an invisible wall. You are unable to return to the fortress where the opening battle takes place. And so once you enter this fortress, you have no reason to return back to the fortress. Therefore, let's not go back. But anyway, up here, as I said, is the exit to the fortress. From here, we wind up on the world map and go into the first town where that scene in development is that I showed you. And that is Cassandra and the Shadow. As I said, very early in development, going to take a while to make it. I don't necessarily have the free time to work on it often. I'm hoping to show off some segments further in the game as I develop them, though, because we really do need to, at some point, get into Cassandra's battle capabilities. And I also want to show off some mechanics that I'm planning for outside of battle. So keep an eye on this channel for those eventual updates. In the meantime, at this very moment, I am posting a playthrough of another game that was made with RPG Maker 1, and a pretty early game, like one of the first games created with this tool. The game is Oasis. It is not my own game, but a game that I am playing for somebody else. So definitely check that out.